everybody, JK here from Animator Island. Welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be doing some gesture drawing today, and I want to say kind of welcome back because we have taken a bit of a hiatus over the past couple of weeks uh, due to travel schedules and all sorts of other busyness. But we're back now, so we're going to jump in to do some gesture drawing. What else do we need to talk about before we do that? Anything? I don't think so. Just gonna kind of go back. Oh, I guess one thing. I may have Lyme disease, so I don't know. The live streams from my end of things are going to be dependent on how I'm feeling any particular day. So I'm not going to schedule our usual Monday at 10 a.m. live streams for right now until I figure out that health stuff. But the hope is that in a couple weeks the medication will work, and then I will be able to return to usual regular schedules. Yesterday was a really rough day with a headache that I just couldn't even get out of bed. So um, I don't want to schedule the regular live stream on Monday and then have to cancel it. So we're just going to put that on hold for the time being, but we will get back to it as soon as hopefully I heal up. So, all right. With that, then let's go ahead and get started. As usual, feel free to join in. I will put the image up on the screen that I'm drawing from, and you can draw right alongside. You can also pause this video if you're watching it pre-recorded or post-recorded, and you can pause at any point and use the poses that we're using today to do your own gesture drawing, because it's really important stuff that you should keep up with practice. So I definitely recommend it. All right, let's share the light. The other thing, I want to make note of right now is that the streaming software that we use, which was previously Melon app, has switched over to slightly changed some things. So hopefully everything goes well and it all works as the way that it always has. But in the event that something goes awry, I apologize for any technical difficulties. The hope is that everything works the way that it was working before. But you just never know when things change, technology being what it is. Okay, so far so good. As far as I can tell, we are up and rolling. All right, so today, these are the images that we're going to be chugging through on some gestures. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but we will at least get to some. Ferdinand's hanging out with us a little bit anyway today. Says, don't push myself, get better soon, and glad to see me streaming. I agree. I'm not going to push myself. That's why I was waiting for a day when I did not have a splitting headache in order to do this. And so far, so good today. So I am very happy that today is going well. Tricky thing is I'm not really allowed to be in the sun at all while I'm on this antibiotics. So that's rough because I want to be out in the yard doing yard stuff and I can't, but that's okay. So hopefully just temporary. In the meantime, we'll be in this nice dark room and stay away from the sun. All right, so these are the images that we are going to be working on today. You'll see that there's a mix of illustrations and photographs. But I want to remind, just in case you're new to the live streams here, I want to remind that if you are new to gesture drawing, I do not recommend that you do gesture drawing off of previously existing illustrations. That is something that you should save for after you get a really good grasp of anatomy and reality. That's when you move on to doing some gestures from existing art. Because, well, for a number of reasons, I've talked about them in the past, but just general advice there. The other thing I wanted to note today is I was doing some gestures the other day when I was feeling okay for a brief period of time, and it just kind of clicked in my head that having good poses to do gestures from really, really matters. So if you're struggling to do gesture drawing or just drawing in general, look for pushed poses, look for really dynamic poses that are interesting and elegant, because if you just take straight up and down figures, it will be much harder. I was doing my session and I started with an image that was just this straight up and down person standing there, and it was so hard, and it was just a mess. Like the drawing turned out terribly because it was just not an interesting pose. There was nothing to push. There was nothing. it was dull. And so the work turned out dull too. So just a quick note there. If you're struggling at all with gesture drawing or poses, find poses that are interesting, that they're going to engage you, engage the audience. Because if you're just trying to do straight up and down, standing there poses, it's going to be boring and you're not going to probably produce the best work. If you can, that's great. But hi, Lee's here. Hi, Lee. How's it going? Good to see you. It's been a while, but we're back in action over on the Animator Island live stream side. Okay, so let's just jump right in. I really like this this first piece. I would love to be able to do something like this at some point, but as you may know, if you watched any of the videos on finding or developing the new style that I'm working toward, this has no lines, and that's not something that I'm normally going to do. This is very graphic, but it's just lovely because it's got such dimension with such little detail work, right? Like this shadow here, these shadows, and then this little highlight gives so much form to the shape, but it's just a flat shape otherwise because it's just a block of color. It's just beautifully dimensional, even with, oh, and Hailey says definitely has all your favorite colors in there. Those are some good colors. I'll give it that. I really am drawn to that aquamarine. That's just so much of our upcoming Cardfire game has that aquamarine color in it. I just love it. And this also does a really nice job. I'm kind of yammering on here, but that's okay. This does a really nice job of handling yellow. I don't know if you have worked with yellow a lot in your own art, but yellow is a tricky color. Like it's hard to make it work well and be cohesive, and just yellow's tricky. So I really appreciate that they've managed to blend all this. Ferdinand mentions that might be why I tend to dislike random image gesture drawing tools. Some have a lot of pictures, but of course the quality and challenge level is very mixed, and I agree. If you get one of the programs or websites that just kind of cycle through different poses and different pictures, a lot of those poses are just not great for drawing. They're doing their best, and it's not like they're necessarily trying to do a poor job. It's just that it's not the same. And Ferdinand, I mentioned that there's an article you did on pushing poses where you took, I think it was Dancing with the Stars. There was a professional dancer and an amateur dancer, and you could see the difference in quality of posing. And the same holds true for models. You will have models that just don't push in quite the right way, and that's what separates them from the ones who are amazing, and you're just like, oh, that's like the greatest pose I've ever seen. So, oh, Maria's here too. Got all the folks here. I'm from Brooklyn, working remote, so good to have you. One more from Hailey. Says, I wonder if there's a gesture drawing tool that lets you upload your own poses, a photo slide tool that has those options. That's interesting. I've not come across one myself, but if anybody knows of one, please let us know in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this afterwards. But that's a good call. I do know that there are, just flat out slideshow programs that you could either download, and it might even be in like Windows, that would just, based on how much time you set, would just post your photos in order. So that might be an option. But I don't know if there's one that would be like specific to drawing, where you start with 5 30-second poses and then move into a 60-second pose and then a 5-minute pose. But that would be an interesting thing. So something to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to jump into this gesture drawing because I don't want to run out of time for actual drawing. And we're gonna kind of go with the standard method that I have been using for our gestures here, which is a modified version of the Youssef method. And I'm going to push these a little bit, I think. I'm not going to do specifically 1-1. Exactly, because I want to kind of push a little bit. I'll shrink that down because I've made it too big. And then we'll just kind of go from there. The other thing that I realized when I was working on the last set of gesture drawings that I did was that we had a session of developing style that I went over female proportion, and I determined what I would want for my standard default proportions on a female character. But I didn't do that for male characters. And so every time I run into a male character, I accidentally start to put in female proportions in a sense. So I think coming up soon, hopefully, once I'm feeling up to it, I'm gonna do a style study on male proportions as well, and that way I can get kind of a basis for some male characters because I have neglected that, and can't neglect that because half of the characters you do are male. So, all right, so getting some things in place, keeping rough and keeping loose. I guess we'll keep that vertical. Hanging arm. Let's get the shell in his hand. All right, so that kind of gets us to where we need to be in order to, if we wanted to walk away from this and come back later, we could have everything we need essentially, except I need to indicate that this is the back, but that would be all we'd really need. Now I notice I've made the head way too big, so we're going to shrink that down slightly and put it up slightly more. There we go. So we have room for a neck. Okay. Now, because this is heavily stylized, I will have to kind of take out some of the style in order to do a more, well, a less stylized version of it. And so that's when it really is extremely important to know your anatomy because the information is not really on here. We're working with flat shapes on this original. So to know the anatomy, previously is going to be really, really essentially to make sure that you're getting things in the right place and you're putting in the right muscles and all that fun stuff. And that's why, again, I say it a lot, but I'm going to keep saying it. It really pays to do drawings from life, from photograph reference instead of just copying art. Because if you copy art, you're not going to have the same internal knowledge that you really, really need in order to do this sort of thing well. So draw from life. And then you can also draw from other things and you can have fun and all that good stuff, but draw from life. Really important. All right. I don't want to do too much on the detail stuff here. I'm starting to get too detailed and losing the point of going through this and just doing gestures. But that's fine. All right, so that kind of gives us a foundation for things, and that's enough to go on if I wanted to use this pose later as a sort of reference. I'm not a huge fan of this this drawing, but it's I'm still warming up for the day, and it's sometimes you have good days and sometimes you have bad days, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to go in and add in some of the standard shading that I like to do just to kind of jazz stuff up a little bit. I just find that this helps me in the future to kind of know where certain things were and the forms of things. So I might put in like this shoulder blade. But just kind of getting those extra bits in that help me to help me to see it in the future when I go back, because later I will go back and use this to do some drawing from and things like that. So that's just kind of why I add those little extra bits. And we could probably toss in just a little bit of shadow so that we can ground it to the ground. All right, good enough for now. We're moving on to the next. Now, this character is ridiculously proportioned. I find it garish and freakish, but I like the pose. So I'm going to change the proportions because I just to me this is kind of almost ugly because it's so pushed. It's so unbelievable that it takes it to an element that is too much for me. Um, uh, Maria mentions following up on lovely advice from Ferdinand. Been taking a lot of photos and attempting perspective grids from them. Oh man, Ferdinand is so good at this. I definitely recommend you use this. I don't know if we have a tutorial or anything on that sort of idea on Animator Island. Maybe I'll try and get him to do it. He's very good at this, and that's something that I admire in his art. He's very good at grounding things to a perspective and putting things in the right place. And that's something I have to work on myself. So maybe he can run a course for us on that, and we can all practice together. But it's very, very useful stuff. Uh, and then Maria continues. I think it's paying off, though. I had to stop for theater stuff. That went really well. I'm glad the theater stuff's going well. That's terrific to hear. I really like hearing updates on what's going on with everybody else too. So that's good stuff. Okay. All right. So this next pose, again, I'm going to change the proportions heavily because I think this is just this is. I don't want to say it's bad because it's very nice. It works. But it's just these proportions are too much. It's just too much. So let's go ahead and see if we can change it up a little bit. And um, it's a lot. But I like the pose. So we're going to go with the pose and we're going to just change up the proportions a bit. Oh, one of the other interesting things is, so typically you'll have contrapposto, which means that these two lines, the shoulders and the hips, are opposite. So normally in a pose, you'll have this kind of balance where you'll go opposite, but this has them actually the same, which is interesting. I guess it works for this pose, but it may be what's starting to throw some things off. Usually, you'll see that these two lines are separate and different, but for now, we're going to go with what we got, keeping the pose as it was. So, all right. So if we end the foot here instead, I think that will probably work better. And we'll get this foot in. All right. And this hand comes down. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what the story behind this pose is. It doesn't seem to have much of a story. I think somebody wanted to draw a particularly shaped female character, and that's what they went with. I don't know. Ferdinand mentions that more perspective videos are definitely planned. There's so much in the backlog. All right, well, we're all voting to move that ahead in the backlog, or at least I am. Okay. So yeah, so we got our foundations here. Again, at this point, this is all I would really need in order to stop and come back later and continue. But since we're here, might as well continue. And I can see that this hand is, or this arm is not quite long enough. So we'll extend that. Only thing about this brush that bugs me is it's hard to get that line that I just drew. This thickness is tricky to get with this brush because it either wants to go super big or it wants to go like very thin. But that's all right. It's fine. It works. All right. So this shape right here is something that really speaks to me. I found this in other gestures and other images that I saved. This is a shape that is going to be repeating in a lot of the things that I do. I really like that flatness and that just that triangle. So I'm going to try and emphasize that a little bit in this one and bring that out around here because that shape is it gets this very nice contrast and this nice feminine pose. So I'm a big fan of that particular shape. Okay, so this gets us down to this pose, but in slightly, I don't want to say more believable proportions, but proportions that, at least for me, are much more pleasing and appealing because the proportions of the original it's just too much. So this will allow me to uh, use the pose, enjoy the pose and the idea in the future without having to worry about this ridiculous um, proportions because they're pretty ridiculous on the original. Let's clean this up a bit so I can see what's in front of what. That arm did not turn out well, but that's okay. We'll just leave it for now. Put the hand in here so that we know where things we're facing, and then we'll add in our shadows to the back because it adds a nice little extra bit. Nope, don't want to lose that. I'm just trying to make sure that the flow is represented and so that when I go back to it, we've got what I need for future reference. All right, I think that's good. So in terms of these two, I've personally liked the second one a lot better. I can feel that I'm looser. I'm feeling that I'm getting, the control. And it's been a few days since I've been doing my gestures, so it's something that you have to work back into. And that's one reason why doing quick gestures early on is really helpful. So if you do some 30-second gestures to warm up, you can just toss them afterwards because they're just there really to warm up. But realize that this is a really big lesson that I've just learned, honestly, only in the later part of my career. If you start doing a drawing or working for the day and it's not going well, the old me would have quit, and that's not the best thing to do. You want to try and push through it because the later work is probably going to be looser. It's probably going to be easier. You might have to go for a walk in between, but stick with it because that's really going to be the difference between professionals and amateurs. Almost like the professionals just keep going even when it's not starting out the best. Don't quit, keep going, see how it goes. If a little after that it doesn't go well, okay, then maybe it's just one of those days, but just something to think about. Okay, let me go back. We got a couple comments. Eileen says kind of an exaggerated Jessica Rabbit figure. That is true, but even still, I think Jessica Rabbit's got more reasonable proportions than this one. But yes, it is. It's like that, but to another degree. And Maria mentioned she was already kind of exaggerated. Accurate. I think Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, in case you don't know what we're talking about, I think she was pushed about as far as you can take it before you start breaking stuff. And I think the artists and animators knew that. They probably tried some that were even more pushed and were like, no, that's too much. So that's a good comparison, and I totally agree. Maria mentions generally used Tahoma, and for drawing, I really like the charcoal brush. Find its texture and versatile. I don't think I'm sure there's a charcoal brush somewhere in Procreate here, but I'll have to think about that because in real life, in the real world, when you don't have a screen in front of you, I love working with with charcoals and with really, I don't know if I have any sitting here. No, not really. I love working with really thick and just meaty, dark materials on newsprint. Like that's just a joy. So if you can find that, um, that would be a good thing. And then I don't know if this is going to show up. Yeah, I guess this shows up. Ferdinand says found some gesture drawing tools that use your own local images. They all seem to be around $15. This one, but never used it. So there's an option you can check out if you want to try and make your own gesture drawing slideshow. All right, moving along. Gotten back to a male figure. So already I know as I'm entering this, I need to watch that I don't just accidentally put in the standard female proportions that I've been using. But I definitely want to eventually go in and do some analysis of male proportions. And this is going to be tricky in general because this is such a compacted pose. You know, so everything is in this one shape. It's not elegant. It's not even that necessarily that readable, but something about the strength in it and the movement still, in spite of it being a crouch pose. This is like this pose felt like it was story based, like something is going to happen next. So that spoke to me and I wanted to try and capture it. But it's going to be tricky because there's no good center line. There's no good, kind of line of action thing here. It's just so compacted and everything. So this might be a time when I break from my usual method a little bit, and I'm going to go maybe heavier on shapes instead. So let me try that and see what happens. I don't know what will happen, but we'll give it a whirl. Let me just try to do this one based on shape rather than on everything else and see how that goes. I don't ever really work this way, so I don't know how it will be, but we can try. Got infinite paper on an iPad because you could just delete it and start over. We talked about this, I think, one other time. It's better not to delete the stuff. What I do when I have a drawing that doesn't work is I'll take it, select it, shrink it down, put it in the corner, usually put a little frowny face next to it, and then I'll start over because I find that that helps me to basically remember that sometimes they don't go well. So if I go back through my drawings at some later time, I want to remember the bad times as well as the good times because that helps me next time there's a bad time. So I definitely recommend that you hang on to your not so great drawings. All right, so that didn't go terribly, just using shapes instead of my usual method. I don't think it feels as good. It doesn't quite capture what I was hoping it would. So I think what I might do is using what I just attempted here as a starting point. First, I'm going to add my extra shadows. Using this as a starting point, I might go back and redo this one and just to see how it would go. Oh, I forgot his arm. Gotta need that. Also would like to at some point do a session just on hands because honestly, everybody can always use work on hands. It's just one of those things that never ends. You get really good at hands and it doesn't matter. You're still going to need to keep practicing hands. Actually, this one's not turning out too badly, so I might just move on to the next because it's really, it came together okay. All right. So let's get in my brush. Work with me. Good enough. We'll get in our shadows here and then we'll move along, I think. 'Cause all right, so that didn't turn out terribly. I still think I like the second one better than this one, but I think this one may be still better and looser than that first one. So that's something. Let me add in just something to ground it a little bit. All right, so we'll move along. I find that these sort of sitting poses require, for me anyway, me to put in the chair or the stool or something for them to sit on. It doesn't feel right if that doesn't happen. So just something to think about. Sorry, go through the chat real quick. Oh, that's a good comment. Maria says the expression on the young man's face to me feels an integral part of this particular pose. Yeah, that's fair. To have that downcast eyes and the pretty seriousness to it, I think that does add and change a lot of this. So that's probably something that I would need to focus on if I wanted to really capture this. Fernandez software reviews are also something in the backlog. You would be shocked at our backlog. We have lists and lists and lists of ideas for Animator Island stuff. Boy, it's just time. We just need the time. And but we'll get there. You know, you just got to do one at a time and do what you can do while you can do it. Okay, so let's get to this one. And like I said, I'm going to probably need to add in the stool or something for this character to sit on. This is another one where the expression is just, it's just it adds so much character to this pose. It's just very interesting. It makes the whole thing feel very different than it would, I think, if it didn't have that particular expression. So with our line of action here, we're really ending here because that's where the weight is going. So while we have all this other stuff going on, this is technically where the line would go, or where it would end. The shoulders are kind of straight. Can I change that at all? Yeah, maybe we'll take it down just a little bit like that, which means we could make the hips this way, I think. Oops. Hands down. I enjoy this pose. Like this is it's just a pleasant, like real pose almost. You know what I mean? Like some poses you see, they're so kind of forced. They're acted, right? And I'm sure that this model was not feeling the particular feelings that she kind of portrays in this, but this just feels alive. This feels like a human being instead of somebody posing, if that makes sense. So Jemik says you can sit on a rock or a log with a bow on his back. Could put her on a log, I suppose. Okay, sorry, I got distracted and interrupted my flow. But that's all right. Should be able to get it back. Foot sticking out here, and then this leg comes forward in space, so we gotta indicate that. And then okay. All right, so as you can see here, I've raised this other shoulder, which doesn't it doesn't make the pose the same anymore. Now the whole thing is going to feel different. So I've lost some of the charm of that character on that particular the feeling, but I wanted to get that contrapposto in, so I just kind of made a choice, and and I've changed it. But that does mean that if I wanted to, I could go back and do this again and just capture more of what the actual pose was like, and that would be totally fine too. But I just kind of wanted to make that alteration, and since I'm not, I don't have to stick to the model, so I might as well just go ahead and make that alteration. Come on, pencil. There you go. That's a little better. Still too much, but that's okay. So I'm enjoying this drawing. I don't know if it shines through at all with how it's turning out, but I'm having fun doing this particular drawing. I am liking doing this one more than some of the others that I've done recently. I'm having fun with this one, so that's a good thing. If you can get some enjoyment into your work, then that's a very nice thing. I think this bottom leg is not quite right, so I'm going to go ahead and cheat by using my transform tool, but that's why we got technology, so let's do it. All right. And then we will give her something to sit on, even if it's just, we can make it the stool, I guess. And I just gonna do some indicators here because it doesn't need to, like, that's not the essential part of this drawing. So we can keep that much more. We keep that much rougher because that's not like, the real point. Okay. All right, cool beans. Let's add some of the shadow in, kind of darken this stool so that we can know that it's different than the character. And what do we gotta put this leg in shadow and probably this area in shadow. We'll keep the arms not in shadow. Let's see if we can get that form in there. There we go. Cool. Yeah, I really like how this one turned out. Again, so much of that came down to the enjoyment of it. I just had fun drawing that one. If I could just do that every time, I'd be really happy. Maria says, your changes make her seem like she's yearning or anticipating something. I like the energy. Yeah, I guess so. Just having that extra, because it adds tension, right? She had to engage the muscle in her, what would that be? I guess trapezius, and I don't think it would be pectoral. Anyway, she had to engage muscles in order to get her shoulder up. So that changes things, and I think that's probably what's lending itself a little bit to that anticipation. And you've also got now this almost a guiding line, right? So the pose here kind of goes up like this now, and so that gives it that energy of what's next, in a sense. Whereas this pose is just down, and it's lovely still. Like I want to go back and draw this one again later with the original pose, but I like both of them. So okay, moving on to this one. Now here we get extra tricky because this one is it's a mannequin more than anything, right? So We just have to keep that in mind while we're drawing because uh, all of the work is done here essentially. The landmarks are already there, almost to a degree. I feel like bored already because there's nothing to solve here. This is already done for me, and so that's one of the other tricky bits about doing uh, gesture drawings from existing art. It's not going to be as interesting. So I'm going to have to try and make it interesting by possibly changing some things or just I don't know, but uh this will not, how do I put it? This will not engage me like the last one did because again, all the problems and everything are already solved. I just now I'm basically copying, which is not fun, at least for me. Maybe some people dig copying, but it doesn't do much for me. So I'm not going to be as engaged with this, and I can feel that it's just not like I'm just copying here, and I don't want to copy. So I'm going to just do this quickly and then be done because it's not it's not going to be interesting for me. Uh, but that's all right. Not every pose is going to be what you want, and that's no big deal. And but that's it's a good lesson for me because I wouldn't have thought that before I actually sat down to start drawing it. I was like, oh, this will be a nice pose. It's in a very pretty pose, and I could totally use it for something somewhere. And then but I didn't realize that because all of the problems are already solved, it's just not really that interesting. All right, so I'm moving on from this one because let's just I don't want to just copy it. In fact, what I think I might do is I might let me try one more thing before I just move along. So I'm gonna put this up here. And I'm gonna do my customary, I didn't like this little face because that helps me to move on for some reason. Putting a little sad face or whatever next to a drawing that I don't like helps me move on. And let me try something here. What if I almost ignore the pose in a sense and just try and make it happen without almost want to like just take the energy of the reference instead of the reference itself. Let's see what happens if I did that. It's hard because I'm basically having to like ignore the reference while I'm working on the reference or while I'm working from the reference is a strange situation, but I'm just gonna try it and see what happens. This leg comes up and it's super in perspective, annoyingly so. Man, this is really rough when I'm attempting because I'm literally trying to not look at the reference and just get the reference. Oh, this is really hard. I wish I could explain exactly what I'm doing here. I'm not sure that I can. I'm trying to just look at the reference enough that I think about the pose without actually copying what I'm seeing, and it's not really going well, but that's okay. It happens. Let's change the head shape or the head positioning a little bit. Well, this turned out to be even more of a mess than the last one. Oh well, sometimes that happens. It does, however, make me want to go get some reference of this pose, this crossed leg sitting pose, and then try again with some photo reference because now I'm curious what that would be like. I don't know if I could find this exact pose in photo reference, but I'd sure like to try because that's a mess. All right. Well, that happens. Let's move on. Happens. But I don't want to end there because I was looking at the clock and I'm going to have to wrap up soon. But I don't want to end on that one because that one did not go well. And I like to end on a victory if at all possible. You can't always, but if at all possible, it is nice to be able to end on a bit of a victory. So let's try. This is an interesting head angle. It's somehow both up and down at the same time. Huh. That's tricky. Because we're looking at the camera is looking up at the head because the horizon line is probably somewhere in that neighborhood. So we're like looking both up and down at this, so that makes it very interesting. But it's much more of a fun challenge than that last piece, so I'll take it. And then the torso is facing this way, which is also fun because then we get a little bit of both. If you can add, we have some articles and videos, I think, on twist, right? Tilt and twist. And here we have beautiful tilting and twisting on different aspects of things that are great. Like it's just such a nice bit of twist and turn. And I really, really appreciate that about this particular pose. Really fan. I like this one too. So much like that other one that I said I was really having fun with, this is another one where it's just enjoyable. The process is fun. The problem solving is fun. Details, even when they don't go well, like that hand, are just much, much more interesting than a dull pose or something like the one right above where all the problems are already solved, things like that. So this arm comes down and crosses her hand in here. And then we got our last leg. It comes out and back to our stool. I like even that this toe here is really fun little bit of gesture. I don't think I can really fit it in because I'm working too loosely, but it's a fun little, I just like that tiny little bit of space in between there adds this really nice element. Okay. I think that's about where we need to be. Or so. And normally the brush is working with me a little bit better than it is today, but it just is giving me the business today. It's not cooperating, but that's okay. Okay, good deal. I will add in the stool very quickly, but if I wanted to do it justice, I would probably take a little longer on the stool on this one, because her foot is, her one foot is grounded to the stool right here. This is where I would want to make sure that I got certain things right. But I'm kind of speeding through this a little bit, so we're not going to have it exactly the way that it should be. It's an interesting stool too. Like this would be a fun one to just work on for perspective, but I would cheat a little bit. All right, good enough. Add a little dimension to the bottom of the stool so that it's grounded to the ground. And then this He's definitely coming in front. So, but the foot needs to be lower. So put the foot down here. Cheat a little bit. Lose that toe, but that's okay. All right, good. Good deal. Let's add our shading in, and then we will probably wrap up for today. Take it all the way up, maybe. Sure, let's do that. And then let's make sure that we know that the front of the stool or the stool leg is in front of there. So we just add that little bit of extra. Darken this in. Darken some of these in a little bit. All right, cool beans. Oh, forgot the shadow under the chin is important. That really adds that dimensionality to that aspect of things. Put in just a smidge of shadow there. Cool. All right, so I think that one turned out pretty well as well. All right, so we're looking at what, 55 minutes. I think that's a pretty good session. We'll wrap up and conclude around the 60-minute mark. And then next time we get together, we'll tackle these two and probably some others. But overall, I think things went pretty well today. Kind of doing my own personal review. The first one had issues. I was not loose at all. This was oh, that was weird. Okay, sorry about that. Guess those technical bits of things, but hopefully I'm back on. I'm going to finish wrapping up and then we'll go. So the second one I think really went well. Third one went better than I expected. I think this this top one here is my favorite probably, or at least it's the one I enjoyed the most. The middle one, just disaster area, but that's okay. It happens. I'm going to specifically go find a pose like this that's photo reference instead of already finished mannequin, and try to draw it. So I'm gonna seek out a pose like this if I can find one that's similar to that. And then this last one I think went pretty well. Looking at it, you know, from a distance, it's got some issues, but that's okay. It's not too bad. But I'm gonna zoom in on this one because I think it's the one that turned out best. And we'll end there so that we can enjoy that. All right, that's all I've got for today. I just want to thank everybody for swinging by, and hopefully you did some gesture drawing. If not, hope you learned some things from watching it. But I appreciate the comments and the the insights, because you don't know what you don't know. So just having that kind of back and forth with folks really helps, because you can see things in a different way. All right. I think that's everything. I do not know when the next live stream will be. It's Friday now. If I'm feeling well enough, I'll try and do one on Monday. If I'm not, happens. So I will. I'll just play it by ear. But you can always like and subscribe, and I think subscribing is the way that it pops up in your notifications for whenever the next one is. And Ferdinand, I think he probably had to get to work, but he will also be around streaming again after getting over some jet lag. So we'll have some more live streams coming for you. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.